Your job was to bathe Kevin Costner. Falling in love wasn't part of the contract. Clara Evans checked her phone one more time as the GPS directed her through the winding roads of Carpinteria. The sprawling estates hidden behind tall gates and lush greenery made her compact Honda Civic feel even smaller than it was. She'd been to plenty of wealthy neighborhoods for in-home therapy sessions before, but nothing quite like this. The call had come 3 days ago, a job offer so confidential that she'd had to sign an NDA before even learning the patient's identity. All she knew was that it would pay twice her normal rate and required her to relocate temporarily to Santa Barbara County. "In 500 feet, your destination will be on the right," the robotic voice announced. Clara slowed down, her palms suddenly sweaty against the steering wheel. The wrought iron gates loomed ahead, partially obscured by ancient oak trees. A security guard approached as she stopped. "Clara Evans for Mr. Costner," she said, presenting her ID and the visitor pass she'd been emailed. The guard nodded, spoke briefly into his radio, and the massive gates swung open. "Follow the main drive all the way up. Someone will meet you at the house," he instructed. As Clara drove through the property, her eyes widened. Rolling hills stretched in every direction, dotted with horses grazing peacefully in the late afternoon sun. In the distance, a Spanish-style mansion emerged, terracotta roof tiles glowing warmly against the clear blue California sky. This was Kevin Costner's sanctuary, far from the Hollywood spotlight, nestled between the mountains and the Pacific Ocean. And for the next 6 weeks, it would be her workplace. A woman in her 50s, with silvery hair pulled into an immaculate bun, waited for her at the entrance. "Ms. Evans, I'm Margaret, Mr. Costner's housekeeper. Please follow me." Clara followed Margaret through the cool, high-ceilinged entryway into a grand living room with panoramic views of the ocean. The decor was elegant but understated. Leather furniture, Native American art, and family photographs arranged tastefully on built-in shelves. "Your room is in the East Wing, but first, Dr. Winters would like to brief you." A tall man with salt and pepper hair rose from one of the armchairs. "Clara Evans, Richard Winters, Mr. Costner's personal physician." They shook hands, and Dr. Winters gestured for her to sit. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I assume you've signed all the confidentiality agreements?" Clara nodded. "Yes, though I still don't know much about the case." "Of course." Dr. Winters opened a leather portfolio. "Mr. Costner was thrown from a horse 2 weeks ago during filming. He sustained 3 fractured ribs on his right side and a dislocated shoulder with partial rotator cuff tear. He's stable, but in considerable discomfort." Clara nodded, mentally cataloguing the injuries and beginning to formulate a treatment plan. "Production has been halted, but there's immense pressure to resume as soon as possible. Studios lose millions every day a star of his caliber is sidelined. What's the timeline for recovery?" "Ideally, 6 to 8 weeks. We're hoping you can accelerate that." Dr. Winters lowered his voice. "There's something else you should know. Mr. Costner is struggling with his current limitations. He's not the most cooperative patient." Clara had dealt with difficult clients before. "I understand. Independence is important to everyone, particularly to someone like Kevin." Dr. Winters closed his portfolio. "Your responsibilities will include daily therapy sessions, pain management techniques, and—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Assisting with personal care tasks that are currently challenging for him." "Personal care?" "Bathing, primarily. His mobility is severely restricted, especially with the shoulder immobilizer. He can't lift his arm or twist his torso without pain." Clara maintained her professional composure despite her surprise. This wasn't exactly what she'd expected, but it wasn't uncommon for physical therapists to assist with ADLs, activities of daily living, during recovery. "I see. I'm comfortable with that if he is." Dr. Winters smiled thinly. "That's the thing. He isn't particularly comfortable with any of this, but it's necessary." Margaret reappeared in the doorway. "Mr. Costner is awake now. Shall I take Ms. Evans to meet him?" Dr. Winters nodded. "Remember, Clara, he's in pain, he's frustrated, and he hates feeling dependent. Don't take it personally if he's difficult." Clara gathered her professional bag and followed Margaret down a long hallway lined with movie posters. Dances with Wolves, Field of Dreams, The Bodyguard. Tangible reminders of the legend she was about to meet. Margaret knocked softly on a heavy wooden door. "Mr. Costner, your physical therapist is here." A gruff voice responded, "Let her in." Clara took a deep breath and stepped into the dimly lit bedroom. Kevin Costner was seated in an armchair near the windows, wearing sweatpants and a button-down shirt draped over his shoulders. His right arm was secured in a sling, and even in the low light, she could see the pain etched into his face. At 69, he still carried the magnetism that had made him a star. His blue eyes, now clouded with discomfort, still held the intensity she remembered from his films. But there was vulnerability there too, something she suspected few people ever saw. "Mr. Costner, I'm Clara Evans. I'll be working with you on your recovery." He assessed her silently for an uncomfortable moment. "You look young. How many years of experience do you have?" 8 years. "I specialize in orthopedic rehabilitation, particularly shoulder injuries." He gestured vaguely with his good arm. "And they told you what happened?" "Horse accident during filming. 3 fractured ribs, dislocated shoulder with partial rotator. Calf tear. And they told you what I need?" Clara met his gaze directly. "Yes, sir. Physical therapy, pain management, and assistance with certain daily activities until you regain mobility." A flicker of something, embarrassment perhaps, crossed his face before he masked it with irritation. "I don't need a babysitter. I need to get back on set." "With all due respect, Mr. Costner, right now you need to heal. The faster you heal properly, the faster you get back to work." His eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't look away. After a tense moment, he sighed. "Call me Kevin. Mr. Costner makes me feel like I should be directing you in a scene." Clara smiled. "Kevin, then, would you like to start with an evaluation so I can develop your treatment plan?" "Now? Unless you'd prefer to rest." He shook his head. "No, let's get this over with." For the next 45 minutes, Clara carefully assessed his range of motion, pain levels, and muscle strength. She was gentle but thorough, noting how he winced when she tested certain movements. "The Puy. Good news is that the shoulder dislocation was reduced properly, and the rotator cuff tear is partial, not complete. With the right therapy and enough rest, you should regain full function. And the bad news? It's going to hurt, and you'll need to be patient." Kevin laughed suddenly, a warm, rich sound that transformed his face. "Not my strong suit, patience." "I gathered that," Clara replied with a small smile. "We'll start with gentle, passive range of motion exercises tomorrow morning. For now, I'd recommend ice for 20 minutes to reduce inflammation." She prepared an ice pack and carefully positioned it over his shoulder. "How's your pain level right now on a scale of 1 to 10? 4 when I'm still, 7 if I move wrong. Are you taking the medication Dr. Winters prescribed?" Kevin frowned. "When I absolutely need to. I don't like how foggy they make me feel." Clara nodded. "I understand. We can try some alternative pain management techniques, breathing exercises, meditation." "Meditation?" His skepticism was evident. "Don't knock it till you've tried it," Clara said lightly. "Science backs it up." She was rewarded with another small smile. "Margaret said you're staying in the East Wing?" "Yes. Dr. Winters thought it would be best if I was on site for the first few weeks." Kevin nodded, then shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Do you need help getting back to bed?" Clara asked. His jaw tightened. "No, I can manage." He pushed himself up with his good arm, but as he turned, he inhaled sharply and clutched his side. Clara was beside him instantly, her arm gently supporting his waist. "Easy does it. Ribs take time." For a moment they were close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, and feel the heat radiating from his body. Despite his age and injuries, his frame was solid and strong against her. "I hate this," he muttered as she helped him to the bed. "I know, but it's temporary." Once he was settled, Clara adjusted the pillows to support his injured shoulder. "Dr. Winters mentioned you might need assistance with bathing," she said, keeping her tone matter-of-fact. Kevin's expression closed off immediately. "Not today." "All right. Will tomorrow morning work? Before we start therapy? He looked away, his profile sharp against the window's light. This isn't exactly how I pictured meeting my next physical therapist. I imagine not, but my job is to help you recover, whatever that entails. She gathered her notes. I'll let you rest now. Shall we say 9 a.m. tomorrow? He nodded, already looking tired. Fine. At the door, Clara paused. One more thing, Kevin. I know this is difficult, but I'm good at what I do. If you work with me, I'll have you back on that horse sooner than you think. His blue eyes met hers, and for the first time, she glimpsed something beyond the pain and frustration. A flicker of hope, perhaps. We'll see, he said. As Clara closed the door behind her, she took a deep breath. The next 6 weeks promised to be challenging in ways she hadn't anticipated. Kevin Costner might be a Hollywood legend, but right now he was just a man struggling with pain and vulnerability. And her job was to guide him through it one day at a time. She just hadn't expected that guidance to include bathing one of the most famous men in the world. Margaret appeared at the end of the hallway. I'll show you to your room now. Dinner is at 7, though Mr. Costner usually eats in his quarters, when he's not feeling well. As Clara followed the housekeeper through the sprawling mansion, she couldn't help but wonder what she'd gotten herself into. Helping Kevin Costner bathe and dress was nowhere in her job description when she'd graduated with her doctorate in physical therapy. Yet something about his reluctant vulnerability, the pride he was struggling to swallow, touched her. Behind, the famous face was a man forced to confront his limitations, perhaps for the first time. That night, as Clara unpacked in her luxurious guest suite, she reminded herself firmly, this was just another job. Kevin Costner was just another patient who needed her professional skills. She couldn't have known then how profoundly false that would prove to be. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Clara's guest suite, revealing breathtaking views of the Pacific Ocean. For a moment, she forgot where she was, until the reality of her assignment came rushing back. Today, she would not only begin Kevin Costner's formal physical therapy program, but also help him with his first bath since her arrival. Clara took extra care with her appearance, choosing a professional outfit of khaki pants and a navy blue polo shirt with her clinic's logo. She pulled her chestnut hair into a neat ponytail and applied minimal makeup. Professionalism was her armor, especially for the intimate task ahead. At precisely 9 o'clock, she knocked on Kevin's bedroom door, medical bag and therapy equipment in hand. "Come in," his deep voice called. Clara entered to find him sitting at the edge of his bed, looking as though he'd had a restless night. Dark circles underlined his blue eyes, and his normally perfectly styled hair was tousled. "Good morning," she said brightly. "How's the pain today?" Kevin grimaced. "About the same. Slept like hell. Lying down can be the worst position for rib fractures. We can try different pillow arrangements tonight." She set down her equipment. "Are you ready to start with the bath, or would you prefer to have breakfast first?" The question hung in the air. Kevin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Might as well get it over with," he said finally. Clara nodded and began preparing the bathroom, filling the large soaking tub with warm water and checking that all necessary. Supplies were within reach. When she returned, Kevin was attempting to unbutton his shirt one-handed, with limited success. "May I?" she asked, approaching him. He hesitated, then nodded, dropping his hand in resignation. Clara kept her movements clinical as she undid each button, careful not to let her fingers brush against his skin. Still, she couldn't help noticing that despite his age and injury, Kevin Costner remained impressively fit. Decades of roles that required him to be physically active had left their mark. "You know, I've loved watching your films since I was young," Clara said conversationally, as she helped him shrug the shirt off his uninjured shoulder. "My dad was obsessed with Field of Dreams. We watched it every Father's Day." Kevin's expression softened slightly. "That one has staying power. Still get people coming up to me quoting lines from it." "If you build it, he will come," Clara recited with a smile. This earned her a small chuckle. "That's the one. I wish everyone watching right now could see how genuine talent like Kevin's stands the test of time." If you're enjoying this story, please take a second to subscribe to our channel and share where you're watching from in the comments. Your support means everything, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this incredible journey we're sharing together. As they made their way to the bathroom, Clara maintained a steady stream of casual conversation, sensing that silence would only heighten the awkwardness. She helped him sit on the built-in bench of the walk-in shower area. "I'll need to remove the shoulder immobilizer temporarily," she explained. "Then we'll cover your shoulder with this waterproof dressing to keep the incision site dry." Kevin nodded, his expression guarded, as Clara carefully unbuckled the sling and removed it. She applied the waterproof covering with practiced efficiency. "The pants," Kevin began, clearly uncomfortable. "I can turn around while you remove them and get into the tub," Clara offered. "Just let me know when you need assistance." Kevin nodded gratefully. Clara turned her back, listening as he struggled with his sweatpants. She heard a sharp intake of breath, followed by a muffled curse. "Need help?" she asked without turning. A pause. "Yes." Clara turned to find him still seated, sweatpants halfway, down his thighs, frustration evident on his face. Maintaining her professional demeanor, she helped him stand and guided the pants down, averting her eyes as much as possible while still ensuring his safety. "I've got a towel ready to preserve." "Your modesty," she said, handing him a large bath towel. "Wrap it around your waist and I'll help you into the tub." Once he was safely settled in the warm water, towel discarded, Clara kept her eyes focused on his face or shoulder as she began to work. Using a soft washcloth, she gently cleansed his uninjured arm first. "Temperature okay?" she asked. "It's fine," he replied, his voice tight. Clara worked methodically, explaining each step before she took it. When she reached his chest, she noticed a long scar running along his collarbone. "Old riding accident," Kevin explained, following her gaze. "Horse spooked during a scene in Dances with Wolves. Ironic that I'm here again because of a horse." "They're beautiful animals, but unpredictable," Clara commented, as she carefully washed around his injured ribs, noting the deep purple bruising. "Like most beautiful things," Kevin said softly. Their eyes met briefly and Clara quickly looked away, focusing on rinsing the soap from his back. "My father trained horses," she said, changing the subject. "That's how I put myself through PT school, working at his stable on weekends." Kevin's interest seemed piqued. "Where was this?" "Small town outside of San Luis Obispo. Nothing fancy, mostly quarter horses for local ranchers." "Good horses, working horses," Kevin nodded appreciatively. "I've always respected people who understand horses. They don't give their trust easily." "Neither do most people," Clara observed. A shadow passed over Kevin's face. "No, they don't." As she helped him wash his hair, her fingers gently massaging his scalp, Clara felt him gradually relax under her touch. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly, and his breathing became deeper, more regular. "This isn't as bad as I expected," he admitted as she rinsed the shampoo away. Clara smiled. "Most things aren't." When they finished, she helped him stand and wrapped a fresh towel around his waist, offering her shoulder for support as he stepped carefully out of the tub. The bathroom was steamy and warm, smelling of expensive soap and shampoo. "I can manage." "The rest," Kevin said, reaching for a second towel to dry his hair. "Are you sure your shoulder—" "I'm sure." His tone made it clear the discussion was over. Clara nodded. "I'll wait in the bedroom to help with your clothes and reapply the sling." 20 minutes later, Kevin emerged from the bathroom looking considerably refreshed, a towel secured around his waist and his hair damp but combed. Clara helped him into fresh boxers and sweatpants, then a button-down shirt that would accommodate the shoulder immobilizer. "How does that feel?" she asked as she secured the sling. "Restrictive," he admitted, "but better than yesterday." "Good. Ready to start our first real therapy session?" For the next hour, Clara guided Kevin through gentle passive range of motion exercises, carefully manipulating his injured shoulder to prevent stiffness while respecting the healing tissues. She showed him breathing techniques to manage pain during movement and taught him isometric exercises for his unaffected muscle groups. "You're actually not a terrible patient," she observed as they finished the session. Kevin raised an eyebrow. "Was that a compliment?" "An observation," Clara replied with a small smile. "Though I suspect your cooperation might have something To do with wanting to get back to your film? Perceptive, Kevin acknowledged. We're already behind schedule, and the studio is breathing down my neck. This film, it matters to me. What's it about? Clara asked, as she packed up her equipment. Kevin's eyes lit up with an enthusiasm she hadn't seen before. It's a Western, part of a series I've been working on, about the settling of America, the cost of those dreams, the violence and beauty of that era. He paused. Sounds pretentious when I say it out loud. Not at all, Clara replied. I think stories about what shaped us matter. Kevin studied her for a moment. Most people just ask if there are good fight scenes or who my co-stars are. I'm not most people, Clara said simply. A half smile played at the corner of his mouth. No, you're not. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm. Each morning began with Clara helping Kevin bathe, a process that became gradually less awkward for both of them. This was followed by increasingly challenging therapy sessions and pain management techniques. During one particularly difficult session, Kevin growled in frustration when he couldn't complete a movement Clara had asked him to try. This is bullshit, he snapped. 2 weeks and I can barely lift my arm higher than this. He demonstrated the limited range, wincing as pain shot through his shoulder. Actually, you're making excellent progress, Clara countered calmly. The human body can't be rushed, not even Kevin Costner's. He glared at her. Easy for you to say. You don't have $30 million riding on your recovery timeline. No, she agreed, but I do have my professional reputation, and if I let you push too hard and re-injure yourself, that 30 million becomes 60 million in delays. Kevin stared at her for a long moment, then unexpectedly laughed. You don't pull your punches, do you? Would that help your recovery? Probably not, he admitted. That evening, Clara was surprised when Margaret informed her that Kevin had requested she join him for dinner on the terrace. Until now, their interactions had been strictly limited to therapy sessions and necessary care. The terrace overlooked the property's vast grounds, with the ocean visible in the distance. Kevin was already seated at a table set for two, a glass of red wine in front of him. Hope you don't mind joining me, he said as Clara approached. Gets lonely eating alone every night. Not at all, she replied, taking the seat across from him. This view is spectacular. One of the reasons I bought this place. Kevin gestured toward the vineyards that stretched toward the mountains. Privacy was the other. As they ate the meal prepared by Kevin's personal chef, grilled salmon with fresh vegetables from the estate's garden, their conversation flowed more easily than Clara had expected. Kevin asked about her background, seeming genuinely interested in her journey to becoming a physical therapist. After my mother's stroke, I saw firsthand how much the right therapist can change someone's life, Clara explained. She had to relearn everything. Walking, talking, using her hands. Her PT became like family to us. Kevin nodded thoughtfully. It's intimate work you do, getting people through their most vulnerable moments. It is, Clara agreed, but there's nothing more rewarding than watching someone reclaim their independence. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the terrace, Kevin refilled their wine glasses. Clara noticed how the evening light softened his features, highlighting the crinkles around his eyes when he smiled. What about you? She asked. After decades in the spotlight, what keeps you making films? Kevin gazed out at the horizon, considering her question. The stories, he said finally. There are still so many I want to tell. He turned back to her. But it gets harder. The industry changes. Bodies age. He glanced ruefully at his sling. And sometimes the horses have other ideas. Clara laughed softly. Horses always have other ideas. As darkness fell, lanterns around the terrace illuminated automatically, creating a warm, intimate atmosphere. Clara knew she should excuse herself. Maintaining professional boundaries was essential, but something in Kevin's expression made her hesitate. Thank you, he said unexpectedly. For what? For not treating me like I'm made of glass, or like I'm some icon who can't take criticism. Kevin's voice was quiet. People have been walking on eggshells around me for so long, I'd forgotten what it feels like to have someone just see me. Clara felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with professional satisfaction. The way he was looking at her now, open, unguarded, made her suddenly conscious of how alone they were under the starlit sky. "Kevin, Before she could finish, the terrace door opened and a sleek, elegant woman stepped out. She wore a perfectly tailored pantsuit and carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her cool gaze swept over the intimate dinner setting, lingering on the wine glasses and candles, before settling on Clara with undisguised assessment. "Kevin, darling," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "I came as soon as I heard about the accident. The studio is in absolute chaos." Kevin's expression changed instantly, his features hardening into a polite mask. "Eleanor," he said, rising carefully from his chair, "I wasn't expecting you." Eleanor Hastings approached, placing a proprietary kiss on Kevin's cheek before turning, her calculating stare to Clara. "And you must be the physical therapist," she said, making the profession sound vaguely suspicious. "How fortunate that Kevin has such dedicated care." Clara stood, extending her hand professionally. "Clara Evans, and yes, Mr. Costner is making excellent progress." Eleanor's handshake was brief and cold. "Wonderful. Then perhaps we can discuss how soon he'll be back on set." She linked her arm through Kevin's uninjured one. "We have so much to catch up on, Kevin. Production issues, legal matters." The warmth and openness that had characterized the evening vanished completely. Kevin glanced at Clara, an unreadable expression in his eyes. "We'll continue your therapy session first thing tomorrow, Mr. Costner," Clara said formally, already backing toward the door. "Thank you for dinner." As she walked away, she heard Eleanor's low, melodious laugh and felt an unexpected pang in her chest. Whoever this woman was to Kevin, she clearly held a position of intimacy that Clara, as his therapist, should never aspire to. Back in her room, Clara pressed her palms against her face, alarmed by her reaction. She was a professional here to do a job, nothing more. So why did the appearance of the elegant Eleanor Hastings make her feel like she'd just lost something she never even had? Clara woke before dawn, her dreams filled with fragments of the previous evening, Kevin's unguarded smile in the lantern light, the way his eyes had held hers, and then Eleanor Hastings' perfectly timed entrance. Professionally speaking, Eleanor's arrival was probably for the best. Clara needed this reminder of boundaries. She dressed quickly and headed to the kitchen, hoping to grab coffee before anyone else was awake. To her surprise, Margaret was already there, arranging fresh fruit on a platter. "Good morning, Ms. Evans," the housekeeper said. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," Clara admitted, pouring herself coffee from the carafe. "Is Ms. Hastings staying long?" Margaret's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "Ms. Hastings always stays in the blue suite when she visits. She and Mr. Costner have a complicated history." "I got that impression," Clara said carefully. "She's been his attorney for 15 years, Margaret offered. Helped him through his divorce, his contract disputes. She's very protective." Clara nodded, absorbing this information. "And are they—" Margaret busied herself with the fruit arrangement. "That's not for me to say." After a pause, she added, "Mr. Costner asked that you meet him in the study this morning instead of his bedroom. Ms. Hastings has some questions about his recovery timeline." The study was located on the first floor, a richly appointed room, with leather-bound books lining the walls and large windows overlooking the stables. When Clara entered, Kevin was seated behind an imposing desk while Eleanor stood by the window, speaking quietly on her phone. "Clara," Kevin said, his tone formal compared to last night's warmth. "Thank you for joining us." Eleanor ended her call and turned, her sleek bob swinging perfectly. "Ms. Evans, I hope you don't mind this slight change in routine. As Kevin's legal counsel and representative to the studio, I need to understand exactly where we stand with his recovery." Clara took the seat across from Kevin, maintaining her professional composure. "Of course. The production is hemorrhaging money every day," Eleanor continued, perching on the edge of the desk closer to Kevin than seemed necessary. "We need specifics about when he can return to set, even in limited capacity. Mr. Costner has made..." Significant progress, Clara began, deliberately using his formal name. But he still has at least 4 weeks before he should consider even light filming. Eleanor's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. 4 weeks? That's absolutely unacceptable. It's not a negotiation, Clara replied evenly. It's medical reality. Perhaps we should get a second opinion, Eleanor suggested, her hand resting briefly on Kevin's uninjured shoulder. Someone with experience treating high-profile athletes, accustomed to accelerated recovery schedules. Clara felt a flare of indignation, but kept her voice steady. Mr. Costner is welcome to seek any medical advice he chooses, but rushing his recovery risks permanent damage to both his shoulder and ribs. Kevin, who had been watching this exchange silently, finally spoke. I trust Clara's assessment, Eleanor. Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course you do, darling. She's very persuasive. She checked her watch. I have calls to make. We'll discuss this further at lunch. After she left, a heavy silence settled over the study. Kevin looked tired, the lines in his face more pronounced than usual. I apologize for Eleanor, he said finally. She's under pressure from the studio. And that pressure falls on you, Clara observed. Part of the game. He gestured to his shoulder. Ready to torture me some more? Clara smiled despite herself. Always. They moved to the estate's well-equipped home gym for the day's therapy session. As Clara guided Kevin through increasingly challenging exercises, she noted his determination, despite the pain. You're pushing harder today, she remarked as he completed a set of controlled rotational movements. Kevin's jaw was set. Eleanor's arrival was a reminder of what's at stake. Your health should be what's at stake, Clara countered, adjusting his form slightly. Not production schedules. Kevin lowered his arm, his blue eyes meeting hers directly. Last night, before Eleanor arrived, what were you going to say? Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. I don't remember. I think you do. His voice was soft but insistent. Before she could respond, the gym door opened, and Eleanor appeared, now dressed in riding clothes that highlighted her slim figure. Sorry to interrupt, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Kevin, the contractor is here about the stable expansion. He needs your input. Kevin frowned. Can't it wait? He's driven all the way from Santa Barbara, Eleanor replied smoothly. Besides, Ms. Evans probably needs a break from all this. She gestured vaguely at the therapy equipment. Clara stepped back, maintaining her professional demeanor. We were just finishing. We can resume this afternoon. Kevin looked like he wanted to object, but finally nodded. This afternoon, then. As he left with Eleanor, Clara couldn't help, noticing how the other woman placed her hand on the small of his back, guiding him with the familiarity of long intimacy. Clara spent the next hour documenting Kevin's progress and updating his treatment plan. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice Eleanor entering the small office she'd been assigned. Ms. Evans, Eleanor said, startling her. Do you have a moment? Clara closed her laptop. Of course. Eleanor sat across from her, crossing her long legs elegantly. I wanted to speak with you privately about Kevin's situation. His medical situation? His entire situation. Eleanor's gaze was penetrating. You seem like an intelligent woman, so I'll be direct. Kevin is at a critical juncture in his career. This film represents a significant investment, both financially and emotionally. I understand that, Clara replied, which is why proper recovery is essential. What you may not understand, Eleanor continued as if Clara hadn't spoken, is the complex legal and financial web surrounding this project. Kevin is not just the star, but a major investor. If production delays continue, he stands to lose millions. Clara maintained eye contact. My concern is his physical recovery, not his financial portfolio. Eleanor smiled thinly. Of course, but there's something else you should know. She leaned forward slightly. Kevin has always had a pattern with his caregivers. Nurses, assistants, therapists. He finds vulnerability appealing, both his and others. Clara felt her chest tighten. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. Eleanor's voice remained perfectly cordial. Kevin is charming and genuine. That's not an act. But he's also a man accustomed to getting what he wants. When he's finished with this film, he'll move on to the next project, the next location, the next connection. Clara kept her expression neutral despite the sting of Eleanor's words. My relationship with Mr. Costner is strictly professional. Eleanor studied her for a moment. Good. Then we understand each other. She stood gracefully. Kevin has been through enough public spectacle with his last divorce. The last thing he needs is more complications. After Eleanor left, Clara sat motionless, her mind racing. Was Eleanor right about Kevin having a pattern with caregivers? Was Clara just the latest in a line of women who had mistaken professional intimacy for something more? Later that afternoon, Clara found Kevin in the stables, his arm in its sling as he watched one of the grooms work with a young chestnut mare. Beautiful animal, Clara commented, coming to stand beside him at the fence. She's new, Kevin replied without looking at her, still getting used to the place. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the horse prance nervously around the training ring. Eleanor spoke to me, Clara said finally. Kevin turned to her then, his expression unreadable. What did she say? She expressed concerns about the production schedule and about other things. What other things? His voice had an edge to it now. Clara met his gaze directly. She suggested you have a history of becoming involved with people who care for you during vulnerable periods. Kevin's jaw tightened visibly. Did she? Is it true? Clara asked softly. He looked away, back toward the nervous mare. Eleanor sees what she wants to see. She's been in my life a long time. That's not an answer. Kevin sighed, running his hand through his hair. I've had relationships that started in unusual circumstances, some with people who worked for me in various capacities. Is that what you're asking? I'm not sure what I'm asking, Clara admitted. Kevin turned to face her fully. Eleanor thinks she's protecting me, always has, but she doesn't get to decide who matters in my life. The intensity in his eyes made Clara's heart race. Kevin, There you are. Eleanor's voice cut through the moment as she approached from the main house. The studio executives are on the line. They want to discuss contingency plans. Kevin's expression hardened. Tell them I'll call back. They've been waiting for 30 minutes, Eleanor pressed. This is about the future of the entire project, Kevin. Clara stepped back. You should take the call. We can continue therapy after dinner. Kevin looked like he wanted to object, but Eleanor was already guiding him toward the house, speaking rapidly about contractual obligations and insurance claims. That evening, Clara ate dinner alone in her room, declining Margaret's invitation to join Kevin and Eleanor in the dining room. She needed space to think, to regain her professional perspective. Around midnight, unable to sleep, Clara decided to take a walk. The estate grounds were beautiful in the moonlight, and the fresh air might clear her head. As she passed by Kevin's study, she noticed the light was still on, the door slightly ajar. She hesitated, then heard raised voices from within. You had no right to speak to her like that, Kevin's voice angry and low. I had every right, Eleanor replied sharply. I'm trying to protect you. From what? Clara is my physical therapist, for God's sake. Is that all she is? Eleanor challenged. Because I've seen how you look at her, Kevin. The same way you looked at Jenna, at Christine. That's enough, Eleanor. No, it's not enough. Do you have any idea what's really at stake here? The studio isn't just concerned about delays. They're looking for any excuse to replace you with someone younger. Clara knew she shouldn't be listening, but she couldn't move. This film is everything you've worked for, Eleanor continued, her voice softening. Your legacy project. You can't afford any distractions or scandals, not now. Clara isn't a distraction, Kevin said quietly. She's 15 years younger than your daughter, Kevin. A heavy silence followed. The lawsuit against the studio is at a critical stage, Eleanor said after a moment. If they find out about your relationship with your physical therapist, however innocent, they'll use it against you. They'll claim you're not committed to recovery, that you're sabotaging the production. There is no relationship, Kevin replied, though his tone lacked conviction. Keep it that way, Eleanor said firmly, at least until filming is complete and the lawsuit is settled. Lawsuit? Kevin's voice rose slightly. You told me we were in negotiations. We are, Eleanor said quickly, but these situations are fluid. You know how these studios operate. They're looking for any leverage they can find. Clara backed away from the door, her mind reeling. A lawsuit against the studio. What had Eleanor been hiding from her, and possibly from Kevin himself? She retreated down the hallway. She collided with someone coming around the corner. Oh, Clara gasped, finding herself face to face with Margaret. The housekeeper regarded her knowingly. Couldn't sleep, Miss Evans. I was just getting some air, Clara explained weakly. Margaret nodded, though her expression suggested she didn't believe it. Be careful, Miss Evans, she said quietly. This house has many secrets. Not all of them belong to Mr. Costner. Clara returned to her room, more confused than ever. What had Margaret meant? What secrets was Eleanor keeping? And most troubling of all, why did Clara care so deeply about a man she'd known for less than a month? As she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Clara knew one thing with certainty. She was falling for Kevin Costner, and that was the one complication neither of them could afford. The following morning, Clara woke to find a note slipped under her door. In Kevin's distinctive handwriting, it read, "Meet me at the stables at 6 a.m., please." It was already 5:45. Clara dressed quickly in jeans and a light sweater, her mind racing with questions after what she'd overheard last night. As she hurried across the misty grounds, the rising sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns. Kevin was already at the stables, speaking quietly to one of the grooms. He wore riding boots and had managed to dress himself in jeans and a button-down, though his injured arm remained in its sling. When he saw Clara approaching, he dismissed the groom with a nod. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Of course," Clara replied, "though this is earlier than our usual session." "This isn't about therapy." Kevin gestured toward an ATV parked nearby. "I want to show you something. Eleanor's still asleep and I'd like to keep it that way." Clara hesitated. "Kevin, about last night." "Please," he interrupted. "Just come with me. Then we can talk about everything." Against her better judgment, Clara climbed onto the passenger seat of the ATV. Kevin drove one-handed along a dirt path that wound through vineyards and up into the hills behind the estate. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of eucalyptus and ocean salt. After about 15 minutes, they crested a hill and Kevin stopped the vehicle. Before them stretched a panoramic view of the entire property, with the Pacific Ocean glittering in the distance. "This is my favorite spot," Kevin said, turning off the engine. "When I bought this land, I spent the first night right here sleeping, under the stars." Clara took in the breathtaking vista. "It's beautiful." Kevin turned to face her, his expression serious. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen." "Can you do that?" Clara nodded, her heart beating faster. "I heard Eleanor talking to you yesterday," he began, "about my supposed pattern with caregivers." He shook his head. "She made it sound like I have some kind of habit of seducing women who work for me. That's not true." He looked out at the view, gathering his thoughts. "What is true is that I've lived much of my life in unusual circumstances. When you're in my position, it's hard to know who you can trust. The people who see you at your weakest, who take care of you without asking for anything in return, those relationships matter." Kevin met her eyes directly. "Yes, I've had relationships that started in professional contexts, a few, but they weren't patterns or conquests. They were connections that developed because those women saw me, not the actor, not the director, not the name on a marquee, just me." Clara swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you heard us arguing last night," Kevin said simply, "and because I don't want you believing Eleanor's version of who I am." "I heard something about a lawsuit," Clara admitted. "Something Eleanor hasn't been telling you." Kevin's jaw tightened. "That's what I need to figure out. Eleanor's been my attorney for 15 years. I trusted her with everything. My divorce negotiations, my contracts, my business investments. But lately, things haven't been adding up." "What do you mean?" Kevin sighed, running his hand through his hair. "This film I'm working on, it's special to me. part of a trilogy I've been trying to make for years. The studio has been difficult from the start, trying to cut the budget, rushing the production schedule. And Eleanor represents you in those negotiations. She does, or she's supposed to. Kevin's expression darkened. But I'm starting to wonder whose interests she's really protecting. Clara considered this. Last night she mentioned something about the studio wanting to replace you with someone younger. Did she? Kevin looked troubled. That's the first I've heard of it, and it doesn't make sense. The project is fully financed based on my involvement. There's no way they could replace me without scrapping the entire production. Clara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Kevin, is it possible that Eleanor is manipulating the situation somehow? Maybe even... She hesitated. Using your injury to her advantage? Kevin was silent for a long moment. I've been wondering the same thing, especially since she showed up here so quickly after my accident. As the sun rose higher, they sat in silence, the implications hanging between them. I need to get back, Kevin said finally. Margaret will be serving breakfast soon and Eleanor will be looking for me. On the drive back, Clara's mind raced, connecting pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed. Eleanor's insistence on keeping her away from Kevin, the mysterious lawsuit, the pressure about recovery timelines. What if it wasn't just about the film production? When they reached the stables, Kevin parked the ATV and turned to Clara. Whatever's going on, I need to handle Eleanor myself, but I want you to know something. He took her hand, his touch sending warmth up her arm. These past weeks with you have been different, important. Clara felt herself leaning toward him, drawn by something stronger than professional ethics or common sense. Kevin's blue eyes held hers, and for a moment the rest of the world seemed to fade away. The sound of approaching footsteps broke the spell. They separated quickly as one of the stable hands rounded the corner, carrying feed buckets. We should get back to the house, Clara said, her voice not quite steady. Kevin nodded, though reluctance was written across his features. Later, he promised. We'll finish this conversation later. But later proved elusive. When they returned to the main house, Eleanor was waiting, her expression thunderous. Where have you been? She demanded, not bothering to acknowledge Clara. The studio executives are on their way for an emergency meeting. They'll be here in an hour. Kevin's eyebrows rose. What emergency meeting? This is the first I'm hearing of it. Eleanor glanced at Clara with obvious displeasure. It's about your contract and the injury clause. They're bringing their legal team. Go change into something more authoritative. After Kevin reluctantly went inside, Eleanor turned to Clara, her voice low and dangerous. I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. Kevin doesn't need distractions. Is that what this is really about? Clara challenged. Or is it about whatever lawsuit you're keeping from him? Eleanor's eyes narrowed. You have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe not, Clara conceded. But I think Kevin deserves to know exactly what's happening with his career and his film. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Listen carefully. I've protected Kevin for 15 years. I've negotiated contracts that made him millions while other actors his age were being put out to pasture. I've kept his reputation intact through 2 divorces and countless indiscretions. Whatever you think you know, whatever you think you feel for him, it's nothing compared to what I've built. Does that include secretly negotiating with the studio behind his back? Clara asked boldly. Eleanor's momentary shock confirmed Clara's suspicion. You know nothing, she hissed before turning on her heel and stalking back to the house. Clara spent the next few hours in her office, ostensibly updating Kevin's treatment records, but actually researching Eleanor Hastings online. The attorney had an impressive record representing A-list talent in Hollywood, particularly aging male stars negotiating their final major contracts. What struck Clara was a pattern. Several of Eleanor's clients had experienced mysterious production, delays or health issues during critical negotiations. A knock at her door interrupted her research. Margaret entered, carrying a tray with tea. Thought you might need this, the housekeeper said, setting down the tray. The house is rather tense today. Clara thanked her. Margaret, how long have you worked for Kevin? 23 years, the older woman replied proudly. since Dances with Wolves won the Oscar. And Eleanor? Has she always been so involved in his affairs? Margaret's expression became guarded. Ms. Hastings became Mr. Costner's attorney after his first divorce. She's been very dedicated. Clara chose her next words carefully. Have there been other times when she's managed his care during illnesses or injuries? Margaret paused, then nodded slowly. 3 times that I recall. Once when he threw out his back filming Waterworld. Again during contract negotiations for the Bodyguard sequel that never happened. He came down with pneumonia quite suddenly. And before his last major contract with Paramount, he had a mysterious case of exhaustion. And did she bring in medical professionals to care for him during those times too? Always. Margaret gave Clara a significant look, though none lasted as long as you have. Before Clara could ask more questions, they heard raised voices from the study downstairs. Kevin's deep baritone, uncharacteristically angry, followed by Eleanor's sharp retort. Margaret shook her head. I should go, the studio executives just left. It didn't sound pleasant. After Margaret departed, Clara sat motionless, piecing together what she'd learned. If her suspicions were correct, Eleanor had been manipulating Kevin's health situations for years to strengthen her negotiating positions with studios. Was his current injury just another opportunity for her? Clara was pulled from her thoughts by the sound of breaking glass from downstairs, followed by more shouting. Unable to stop herself, she hurried toward the study. The door was ajar and she could see Kevin standing by the window, his back rigid with anger. Eleanor stood near the desk, her usual composure cracked. 15 years, Eleanor, Kevin was saying, his voice tight with fury. 15 years of trust, and this is how you repay me. I've done everything for you, Eleanor shot back. Everything. Who negotiated your last 3 contracts when every studio in town was writing you off as a has-been? Who protected you during the divorce when your ex-wife wanted half of everything? Me. By lying to me? By negotiating behind my back? By doing what needed to be done? Eleanor's voice cracked with emotion. The studio came to me 3 months ago. They wanted to reduce your role, bring in a younger co-lead. I knew you'd never agree. So yes, I negotiated without telling you. I used your accident to buy time, to leverage sympathy and insurance claims to force them to keep you as the sole lead. Kevin shook his head in disbelief. You used my injury as a negotiating tactic? Do you have any idea how twisted that is? I used what I had to protect your career, Eleanor cried. Because I love you, I have always loved you, Kevin. Everything I've done has been for you. The raw confession hung in the air. Clara felt like an intruder witnessing something deeply private, but she couldn't move away. Kevin's voice softened slightly. Eleanor, this isn't love. It's control. Eleanor laughed bitterly. And what would you call what's happening between you and your nurse? Love at first sponge bath. Leave Clara out of this. I can't. Eleanor's carefully constructed facade was crumbling completely now. Don't you see? She's just the latest in a long line of women who want something from you. I'm the only one who stood by you, who sacrificed everything. I never asked you to sacrifice anything, Kevin interrupted. And I never promised you anything beyond our professional relationship. Eleanor stared at him, wounded. So that's it? After everything I've done, you're choosing her? This isn't about Clara, Kevin said firmly. This is about trust. You betrayed mine. Clara backed away from the door, her heart pounding. She'd heard enough, more than enough. Making a swift decision, she returned to her room and began packing her belongings. This situation had become untenable. She needed to remove herself before she became even more entangled in Kevin's complicated life. As she folded her clothes, into her suitcase there was a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find Kevin standing there looking exhausted. You're packing, he observed, his expression falling. I think it's best if I go, Clara said softly. This has become complicated. You heard. Enough, she admitted. Kevin sighed, leaning against the doorframe. Eleanor's leaving. I've asked her to transfer all my legal matters to another attorney at her firm. I'm sorry, Clara said, and meant it. 15 years is a long relationship to lose. It was lost a long time ago, I just didn't see it. Kevin ran his hand over his face. But that's not why I'm here. I don't want you to go, Clara. She looked up at him, her resolve wavering. Kevin, I'm your physical therapist. That's all I can be, all I should be. What if that's not all I want you to be? The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities and complications. Clara took a deep breath. Your recovery isn't complete. You still need therapy. I need more. Then therapy, Kevin said quietly, stepping closer. I need someone who sees me. Not the actor, not the director, not the famous name, just me with all my flaws and limitations. You've seen me at my worst, my weakest, my most vulnerable, and you're still here. I'm here because it's my job, Clara protested weakly. Kevin smiled sadly. Is that really all this is to you, a job? Clara looked away, unable to lie to his face. You know it's not. Then stay, he said simply. Not as my therapist. That part of our relationship can end officially today. Stay because there's something here worth exploring, something real. Clara felt tears welling in her eyes. It's not that simple. It can be, Kevin insisted. I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I'm just asking for a chance to know you outside of therapy sessions and sponge baths. Despite everything, Clara laughed. When you put it that way. Kevin reached out, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. We can start slow. Have dinner somewhere that isn't my terrace. See a movie in an actual theater. Go riding once my shoulder heals. The hope in his eyes was impossible to resist. Clara knew there were 1,000 reasons to say no, to maintain professional boundaries, to protect her heart and career. But there was one overwhelming reason to say yes. The undeniable connection she felt with this man who had shown her both his strength and vulnerability. Okay, she said softly, but I'm still moving out of the guest suite, and you're getting a new physical therapist. Kevin's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. Deal, though no one will ever measure up to you. 6 months later, Clara stood at the edge of a red carpet premiere, watching as Kevin posed. For photographers, his arm fully healed, his posture strong and confident. The film, the one he'd been working on when the accident occurred, was finally complete, and early reviews were calling it the crowning achievement of his illustrious career. She felt a presence beside her and turned to find Margaret. He looks happy, the housekeeper observed. Truly happy. I haven't seen that in a very long time. Clara smiled. The film means everything to him. Margaret gave her a knowing look. It's not just the film, Miss Evans. You know that. As if hearing them, Kevin turned away from the cameras, his eyes searching the crowd until they found Clara. The smile that spread across his face was private, meant only for her. The same smile she woke up to most mornings now. With a quick apology to the photographers, he made his way to her side, taking her hand. You should be out there, Clara protested. This is your moment. It means nothing if I can't share it with you, he replied simply, before leading her out onto the red carpet beside him. As camera flashes exploded around them, Clara thought about the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a professional relationship, a famous actor and his physical therapist, had transformed into something neither of them had expected. Are you ready for this? Kevin whispered, sensing her nervousness at the public attention. Clara squeezed his hand. As long as I don't have to give you a sponge bath in front of all these people, I think I can manage. Kevin laughed, the sound warm and genuine, and Clara knew in that moment that some risks were worth taking. Their beginning might have been unconventional, but their story was uniquely theirs, one of healing, trust, and second chances. As they walked together toward the theater entrance, cameras flashing around them, Clara remembered something Kevin had said during one of their early therapy sessions. The most important stories are the ones that remind us what it means to be human. Their story, whatever chapters lay ahead, would be exactly that.